Hello, everyone. Welcome to a special episode of Little Talks with PopCultX. I'm your co-host Daniel, along with Gabriel. We are very excited to welcome the writer, director of the action comedy movie, I'll say of the year so far, Paper Tigers. Welcome Bao Tran to the show. Hello, Bao. Welcome.
Hello, thanks for having me.
It's very awesome to have you on the show. Now, before I get too much into the movie part of it, I just want to say that I'm a huge fan of your work. I went back and I watched Bookie last night. I saw clips of The Challenger, and it's just your style that you bring to the screen is it's so real and authentic, and I
Mhm.
appreciate that. It's not like fantasy side. It's really I can feel the grit of it. So, with that being said, where do you get your inspiration and style from?
Wow, that's a big question, and thank you so much for your kind words. I don't know. I guess I'm trying kind of a bit of a chop suey dish here. I
Okay.
grew up watching kind of like entertainment from all different types of cultures. I'm the first of my family to be born here in the U.S. as a Vietnamese American, so I kind of grew up in this kind of bicultural household, which meant different types of food at home, and then food, hamburger and pizzas, outside. And
Right.
it's kind of the same thing with entertainment. We had like we'd go to Chinatown and get the video store and get latest movies and TV shows, from Asia, TTV and Hong Kong movies and all that
Mhm.
stuff. So we, devour all that stuff, binge watch, 30, 40 VHS tapes, in a single clip and watch that. And then meanwhile, go out to the theaters and watch Spielberg and James Cameron and, just
Nice.
really loving, you know, Hollywood movies as a whole. And obviously, comic books are a huge inspiration. Just kind of reading again two different types of forms. Manga as an early age, and then American comic books. In your 7-Eleven before you get kicked out. But yeah, I mean that's all. That's kind of my childhood experience with stories and images and color too. I just remember my child being really colorful of just all different types of uses of the palettes and whatnot. So yeah, so it's a hard thing to say. I just love and am inspired by just stories from all over, and especially comedies and humor is so interesting. See how it
Mhm.
plays so differently across cultures and different age groups as well. That's such a fascinating thing to kind of explore and figure out what that is. But like you said, Bookie is a noir piece, so
Right.
just spanning across different type of genres and really just loving the stories in general.
Awesome. Awesome. Would you say that your parents, as immigrants, their story, and then in turn, your life as a child of an immigrant has really shaped your storytelling style then?
Yeah, I think in a whole sense, I think it's very how would you say? I've learned to have my feet on the ground, it's like
Hmm.
maybe it's kind of a bit of a blue collar art and just really appreciate, what, my family appreciated around the campfire, just around the TV and just
Hmm.
appreciate that. So I'm not really I didn't grow up to fine culture, we're very salt of the earth people. And so that's what I really appreciate and just stuff that really can appeal to everyone. And I'm really attentive to maybe there's a way to answer the question. I'm attentive to the type of stuff, trying to tell stories in movies that my family and my parents and the old generation can understand, and also the younger kids can
Right.
understand and
Right.
appreciate. So and it doesn't have to be meaning like a safe child friendly family film in that sense, but just
Right.
something storytelling that's accessible, that's real, that's something that people can just relate to.
Right on.
And about one of the things that I noticed while watching your film was that the movie is very diverse with the characters that are portrayed. You have an African American, Caucasian, Asian Americans, etc. Was that something that you set to do before making the movie? Is that you wanted something that represented the mixture of a lot of different cultures and show that brotherhood that so many of us actually have in the United States of friends that are from different backgrounds?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when you have uh I guess how would you say, a minority perspective, we all
Hmm.
kind of band together and have share notes and compare experiences because we're kind of on the fringes and we're a bit of an outsider situation. So that is always definitely in the DNA of all the work that I do, Bookie as well, and just really understanding what it means to kind of be on the I guess, on the fringes. Even though now we're being a little bit more accepted in the mainstream culture, but always feel a little bit on the outside. And I think that's fine, and it's a way of kind of seeing the world and seeing how people interact with each other. And so that's really important as well, that we wanted to have, how we kind of ban how we talk about white people when white people aren't around. No offense, but it's, there's kind of like that type of vibe, which is
I
always
hear you.
fun and interesting to me. Oh, you won't hear it. So, but yeah, it's that type of that type of energy that's always fun and entertaining, because you almost like you kind of let your hair down. You don't have to behave. You don't have to be a model minority. So those are really rich stories. I think that are really interesting. And one of the kind of the key things from the outset, was that, like, we didn't want anyone speaking accents. It was just us speaking the
Hmm.
way we normally speak and the way we grew up, and having our friends that we knew each other. And then just kind of on that historical aspect, for kung fu culture, this movie's set in Seattle. I'm from Seattle. It's also kind of a loving tribute to Bruce Lee's contribution here
Right.
in Seattle, because when he first came to the States, he came to Seattle and went to school here. He opened up his kung fu school. He met his
Hmm.
wife here. He had students that were all broad stripes and colors,
Mm.
and that still, continue to teach to this day. So, that's the type of legacy of history that we still live under, and we kind of like reap the rewards of that.
Right.
Absolutely. I also got a sense that you're a big, maybe a hip hop fan. That hip hop culture is heavily influenced in this movie. That you have people talking with sort of like a hip hop swag, the hip hop beats that are part of the soundtrack. Are you a hip hop music fan? And was that something that you incorporated, into the your film as a fan of that genre of music?
Yeah, I think it's, again, kind of speaking to what we're talking about, kind of the appreciation of each other's cultures, especially Black
Hmm.
culture and Black music.
Hmm.
That's Asians and Blacks, kind of came together, and culturally, at least speaking, really, really close, in terms of the influence of hip hop, R&B, and that's a lot of stuff that I grew up and listening and appreciating. And so yeah, that's kind of the backdrop to kind of like set the pace for these guys kind of coming together in that world. Also sets them in that time as well. Yeah, it's an interesting thing. It's always it's kind of like, in the DNA of the things that I look for music. And I always kind of tell my composer that I want something that's a little more bump in the trunk, so a little bit more, a little, just like, because it's like percussion and just like really rhythm based,
Hmm.
whereas a
Yeah.
lot of maybe Western scores are a little bit more, from the melody or point of view. But like, I wanted like something that drove, that you could always just feel there was a rhythm to it. So.
Nice.
As you were also the writer and director of Paper Tigers. So which process or creative process do you prefer? The writing of it, or maybe even more so the directing of the movie?
um I heard it was like, was it Billy Wilder saying, he's like, when I'm writing, I'd rather be directing. When I'm directing, I'd rather be writing. Um,
Yeah.
because you just see the things that, oh, I should have fixed this, or I should be doing
Hmm.
this instead. Um, yeah, for me, I grew up, kind of learning self-taught filmmaking, and at that time, Robert Rodriguez, Robert Without
Oh
Crew
yeah.
was like this huge, huge influence, and so the whole
Hmm.
ethos is just guerrilla filmmaking, grabbing a camera, learning how
Hmm.
to do everything right, direct, and edit. And so I kind of did that path, and so the whole thing of like division of labor, where it's once you start getting into credits and all this stuff, where it's like a little bit more, developed types of films. Like, I never really understood those kind of layers of really division, because I think it's really one piece.
Yeah.
And when I'm writing, I'm already thinking about editing. You're editing, you are sculpting the writing and the dialogue. You're deciding what dialogue goes in and goes out. And there's also, the thing with ADR is that you can come bring in actors later to loop in lines, additional lines. So you're always kind of thinking about that as well. So yeah, it's all of a piece to me, and maybe that's kind of that's has really helped me, on set, in terms of figuring out what I want and what the things that we need or we don't need. I can kind of make those quick editorial decisions or writing decisions as you go. So, and maybe actors argue with you less when they know you wrote the script. So.
That's true. That's true. With so you've done a lot of this is your first feature film. So you've done a lot of short films before this. How much did you draw on that experience from short films and bring it into the feature film world?
Yeah, so this is the first feature film that I've directed. I've edited feature films before. I was working
Right.
on Vietnam for a while, and I was cutting features for some other directors. So I learned a lot just from that process, and
Okay.
learning the other side of the coin. Like I said before, I kind of learned how to do it all as one piece. But the other one, those experiences taught me kind of like, this is my lane, stay in the lane. What does the director want? What, my job is to kind of help execute for what the director wants. So that kind of helped me appreciate, that collaborative aspect as well. And then, all those experiences coming together into Paper Tigers certainly was all helpful. Yeah, I think it's all storytelling in a lot of ways. Honestly, I think shorts are really actually harder to make than features. Features are hard to make, logistically, and it's
Yeah.
just this big train and so many moving parts. But with short, from a story point of view, the audience is a lot less forgiving. Like your short has to be really,
Hmm.
tight as far as like what you're showing to the audience, because they'll drift, they'll wander, like they'll question why things are there because they only have about 10 whatever minutes to
Right.
do it. Whereas a feature, there's a little bit more forgiveness. It's like, okay, some scenes going to be a little bit slower or whatnot. So it's interesting to kind of watch how kind of time is elastic between short and features. I think shorts are very, very hard to make and do well. And I really appreciate great short filmmakers and short films from that point of view. But when you go into the features, it's a little bit like kind of like how do you eat an elephant, bite by bite. So it's the same thing. Like each act and each piece is like a short film. Every little and maybe 10-minute sequence is kind of a short film within a feature. So you
That's
kind of
true.
think about it from that point of view. It certainly helps.
Right on. Now, one question I just had, this is more specific about the casting. It's just something I noticed. So, in the early part of Paper Tigers, we get the 90s montage, which I thought was really cool and really well executed and made it look like it was from that era, especially with the VHS, and you get that feel of it. But we see that the character of Danny, he's probably pretty big, he's pretty built. But then fast forward 30 years, or he's a little bit more scrawny, a little bit more run down with life, which is what you were trying to tell with the story, I see. But then we get the reverse with his rival Carter. He's the scrawny kid at the beginning, and then he's really built. And you make a joke of that in the script itself, in the writing of how he mentions it. Now, was that something that when you did the casting that you wanted, or was that just something that just happened to be that they had that reversal of their body statures?
Mhm. I think for instance, like the clear reversal of statures, that definitely came through casting. There's certain things that I kind of wrote in the script just to show, how does a person go to pot? They either, gain weight, or they lose, they get emaciated, so
Right.
there's always different ways that you could kind of like spin that tail. But there's also the reality of indie film. You're not always going to get all the things that you can have on paper, and the reality is,
Right.
that portion, that short, it's really a short film. The first 10 minutes of
It was, yeah.
the younger heroes. We actually shot that like a year and a half before the rest of the shoot,
Okay.
because we were raising money and we were trying to figure out, how do we have a piece that we could help sizzle and help sell as a proof of
Gotcha.
concept. So we shot that without knowing what the rest of the cast or the future cast was going to look like. Maybe a little continuities. Jim kind of changed his skin tones a bit, but that's what happened because we just didn't know like what our cast was going to be, and they were great, and we just kind of ran with it and used that footage. And so when we got to the point where we found Elaine who played Danny, like he was
Hmm.
slender, he was a great actor. He wasn't the physical stature wasn't who we had in mind, but it worked, right? He had
Right.
this kind of this silver fox thing going on. He was very skinny or slimmer, and then we had Ron, who was already attached before as Hing, and he's a larger
Hmm.
stature. It's like, oh boom, that just already sold itself. Like you have kind of again people going to pot in different ways, and so it just worked out that it was complementary. And then also Matt is who plays Carter is just huge as it is, and he's much bigger in person than you can imagine. And so it just and that's kind of like the magic of indie film, because you have to be really flexible and but
Hmm.
know what you need, and hopefully the universe provides, and in this case it did. And it just happened that way that they're just all like great for the part. And like same with
Yeah,
Jim
they
and
are.
Mikkel, like
Hmm.
just great for the part, and we just wanted to go with that. So yeah, and then you kind of like those visuals come up, and you start to learn to lean in on that as as you're shooting it, and then figure out visually how to put them in the frame together, and you show that contrast. So that all kind of like comes as a piece. I kind of think of it as you kind of like roll with the punches a bit with indie filmmaking. So I mean,
Right.
you certainly have an idea, and then you get punched in the face. So
So Val, I wanted to kind of go back to something that you said earlier, that you're a big comic book fan. I'm a huge comic book nerd. And so if you were to ever get an opportunity to adapt a comic book into a feature film, is there a character that you've always been a fan of that you would love to be able to do that?
uh, yeah, I mean, there's so many. I mean, I love Frank Miller's run on Daredevil. Like that was
Mm.
one of the huge lines of storytelling that I really loved and appreciated. I haven't really kept up with all the adaptations. I hear the series was pretty faithful, but yeah, it's just stuff like that. I remember just growing up. I think it was more about also the type of graphics and
Mhm.
the type of that frame storytelling that is just so
Hmm.
specific to comics, and I just appreciate it as the art form itself. And it was not just the characters and heroes, which was great, and the archetypes, which is great, but also the way the panels and the layouts and the way your eye kind of wanders through the book. And I think that's like so beautiful to me. And I try to think about that because there's a certain flow that you
Mhm.
have in a comic or a graphic novel. And there is a kind of a flow in movies that you have to think about to get the audience to kind of follow you on. So those are kind of the takeaways that I got. But I definitely kind of respect um, them as its own. Akira was awesome, and
Mhm.
even just that pure black and white, it's, most of the manga, was black and whites. And so we kind of feel the colors in our own head of what that is. So I think that's really fun and interesting too. I don't know if it flies as a movie, but just again from a graphic point of view, it's just so beautiful. And honestly wish people appreciate comics more, and just for that point of view than just the characters and the universes, if you will, because the art itself is fantastic.
Yeah,
Bill
absolutely. Yeah.
Sinkovich, amazing. Like
Mhm.
you could rattle on for days. Like Bill Sinkovich, how do you do that into movies? You can't. Like it's so specific, right? So
Yeah, that I couldn't agree anymore. I as a photographer was very inspired by the visuals of comic books. And I mean, even things that I think people would be really surprised by, but like comics influence fashion, they influence storytelling, writing, just every aspect of, I think, art has been fine art has been inspired by comic books. So I'm definitely like encourage kids to pick up comic books. I mean, it helped my vocabulary, believe it or not.
oh
That's how I
yeah,
think I
absolutely.
started reading, was being that little kid that every day my mom would take me to the 7-Eleven. I'd pick up a comic book, and I was reading, these fantastic stories that had, amazing, characters and language in it. And so it really helped me. So I'm a big fan of comic books as well. So I just wanted to get
Yeah.
from one geek to maybe another. Why find out if how they inspired you.
I think you'll outgeek me, but yeah, I mean, those things are so important to me. Also, just kind of um, honestly, not to be hokey about it, but there was a real heroism of those certain
Mhm.
type of stories, at least the stories that I was growing up with. A heroism with Superman and Batman and
Hmm.
all those things before that type of cynicism kind of took over. And maybe that's a bit of a conversation for another day. But I just feel like there's a lot of like, yeah, I mean, superheroes are super for a reason, and there
Yeah,
should be something to grasp onto for that, because they should be those type of shining lights.
I agree. So
Absolutely.
we are a pop culture podcast,
All
and
right.
so what are you currently binging or watching right now that's just like eating up a lot, if you have any spare time, eating up your spare time?
Binging, I can't say because it's like I watch it. I have a queue, but I can't really sit and watch things in one go.
Hmm.
Just the time is just, I don't know how everyone does it. Kudos to everyone. Please, you keep us keep putting food on our table, which is good.
Right.
But I don't know how you do it as a viewer. I don't. Last week I saw Reservation Dogs, which I really loved. I saw the pilot for that, and I think it's
It's awesome.
fantastic.
Hmm.
Taika Waititi is just a huge, inspiration as well. Kind of this modern
Hmm.
day, um, fantastic storyteller, just blending all these different modes. But yeah, for Reservation Dogs is a lot of fun. I'm really excited to see what's next for that. I love Golden Girls. I still watch it. Like if I have it on my queue, I just watch old episodes of Golden Girls. That's my jam. Bob's Burgers. I've been, really love
Oh,
Simpsons as well. Simpsons is one of the big influences for me
yeah.
as well on kind of the TV side or whatnot. And speaking of short storytelling, like that's when I really kind of learned to understand what shorts were. Those
Oh.
episodes, the really great
Hmm.
episodes were really great short films essentially. Um, and so yeah, I don't know, come an old head. If there's something new, a lot of people recommend me to see it, and I'll check it out. So
Right on. We're both huge fans of The Simpsons, so we completely agree with you there. And they're just, I think, the perfect pop culture show because they incorporate everything into there. So yeah, I agree with you there. So I have it on good authority from one of your stars that you are a huge fan of karaoke. I won't ask you to sing
yeah,
for
fake
us right now.
news, fake news.
Fake news. But what's your go-to song in karaoke?
Oh, don't worry about it. I got a whole concept now. My whole set list is just like I'm trying to do a whole 12 track, 13 track album, interspersed by my maybe side acts. I consider everyone else a side act when I'm waiting for my song. I just
Right.
wait for my stuff to come out. I don't know. I like to warm it up. Start something upbeat. So it can kind of vary on the mood, but again, I'm kind of an old head, so maybe some. I like to start something that really actually gets everyone singing together. That way, it kind of warms up my vocals as well.
Gotcha.
Nice.
Kind of the lazy way. I like to do the lazy Vegas entertainer trick of just like putting out the mic and like, hey, now you sing while you can rest and have a sip of scotch while you're at it and just waiting. Yeah, so that's what I do. I guess I'm a lazy concept album artist singer. Let's put it that way.
That's awesome. Now, I know for me, when I finish a project, I'm also a photographer, actor, whatever. But when I finish a project, I'm already thinking about the next 3 or 4 projects down the line. So, with that being said, what's next for you? You have any projects that you could tell us anything about that you have down the pipeline that you see coming up for you? What's going on next?
Yeah, it's a lot of stuff. When and you appreciate this. Whether you're freelance world or freelance life or creative life, you always have to have a couple things in the fire because you never know which one kind of takes off. So
Yeah.
definitely working on some ideas, working through some ideas on the feature side, TV side,
Oh,
even
right
some
on.
docs. I'm not usually a doc person, but I'm helping uh, advise or chat with some other creators on a documentary. So again, just creating is really interesting to me, and just in any stories that are impactful. I think that's what I'm mostly interested in by. Um, yeah, hopefully we can kind of continue on. This movie took quite a while, quite a pound of flesh out of me to make, but hopefully it won't take as long. To make that next one. So hopefully we can get a film out for everybody to hopefully enjoy soon.
Right on. No. Oh, did you have something, Gabe?
Yeah, I was just gonna say congratulations on the success of the movie, and
Mm-hmm.
you being able to sign on to Netflix and see it in the top 10, one of the top films that's streaming right now on Netflix. How does that feel to see all that
Mm-hmm.
hard work finally come to be so widely recognized by fans and being celebrated?
It's fantastic, over the moon about all the reactions. It wasn't, didn't turn out the way we expected it, with COVID obviously and all those things. So
Hmm.
it's just always been like every day has been, what's next, and we always have to like adjust and again roll with the punches. So we were just like so so focused on just promoting the film and getting it out there. We're still going out and touring the country with screenings and all that. So the work is still not done. So, but we do want to stop and smell the roses and enjoy. Yes, we're on
Yeah.
Netflix, which is fantastic, and a lot of people are coming to it kind of cold in a lot of ways. And a lot of way, we're at that point where we don't have to bug our friends to watch it anymore. Now, like people are kind of talking about it, which is always nice, you know. Imagine, because we did a Kickstarter, so we're like, even before the movie was made, you know, before the movie was released, you know, we were doing that begging and everyone please like us
Yeah.
during Kickstarter as
Mm-hmm.
well. So there's been a
Mm-hmm.
whole energy for all that time. So it's kind of nice to kind of do a gear shift and at least enjoy and look at each other and appreciate, like, wow, look what we've been able to do, and also kind of watch it grow beyond our expectations. So yeah, it's been super cool, especially there, you know, an online, more kind of like virtual experience. You know, it's just kind of, we get, you know, this type of great feedback and comments from all over. So that's been really nice too.
I appreciate, as a fan, the way you take the time to interact with people on Twitter, and the way the rest of the cast does as well. They get in there and they're willing to comment, willing to, just interact. And that's something that, it's it's not as usual as you'd expect nowadays. But so I appreciate that.
Thank you. I paid for the unlimited plan just to do that. We'll be doing. How did you discover the film? I'm just curious.
Myself, I was walking through, I think, Target one day, and I saw it there. Saw the
Oh,
DVD or
nice.
Blu-ray, and I was like, "What is that?" Because I saw the picture and the cover, which and I was like, "Oh, I'm a former martial artist. I took Taekwondo for 15 years, and then hadn't done it." So when I read the description of the movie, I was like, "Wow, this looks really great." And then I put it back down on the shelf and walked away. But then I said, I wonder if this movie's on like Redbox or something like that. So I looked it up there. Sure enough, it was there, and didn't get it. But then I saw it was on Netflix. It came, and I was like, okay, I'm watching it right now, and fell in
The
love with
universe has talked, told you, yelled into your ear 3 times.
it. Exactly. And the third time I finally listened, and I'm so glad that I did, because I related to the characters in so many different ways, and it was just wonderful to see that. So I appreciate you telling that story, and I think it's really great in that I see a lot of people online are feeling the same way that I do. Maybe it's a lost art, martial art, that they got away from, that they're trying to get back into now, or maybe they're discovering what their goals in their youth were, and they're finally starting to try and relive them. So I think you've motivated a lot of us Gen X people to get back in there and try and relive what our youthful dreams were.
Yeah, definitely. And for me, what really attracted me to the movie, and which kind of really touched me about it, was being that I'm in my 40s. I have to balance my life, my career, family, all of that, and seeing these like young up and coming, whippersnappers, biting at our feet, thinking that they're bigger, faster, stronger than us. So I definitely relate to the characters, maybe being a little out of shape, and wanting to take up that challenge from younger people. But and then reevaluating and reassessing where you're at, and
Hmm.
saying, what's important to me, what's at my core, what were some of the promises that I made to myself as a young man, and what maybe I forgot about, and what can I go back to and still honor in my life, because it's never too late to,
Yeah.
obviously within this story arc, it's never too late to go back to who you truly are. And I appreciate that story arc, and I appreciate the perspective from, three men that are my age, and my so one of them being the same physical stature. So I appreciate that a lot. Yeah.
That's awesome to hear. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
great.
Chubby guys can still kick butt too.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah, they go.
Right on, right on.
There'll be a whole empowering movement, from this movie. It'll just be a upswell of chubby guys, kicking high and learning how to do all the flips and tricks. It'll be great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I remember from like older Jackie Chan movies, like Wheels on Meals and stuff like that, where they had the heavier set guys doing the action movie. So to see it again and here was great. So I think that's fantastic.
Thank you. Yeah, it's
Well,
been really fun to kind of see these guys. Uh, Ron had gained weight for the role, and we were talking about,
oh wow.
you were talking about the different contrasts of the characters. Ron, who plays Hing,
Hmm.
was husky. I think he gained a couple pounds. He gained a few pounds from Mulan, and then, but
Right.
still, seeing Elaine next to him, like, I asked him to gain more weight. So yeah, like in a span of like 6 weeks, he just started like kind of putting down the pounds.
He was binging a
And
different thing.
he was binging a different thing, and to make it, and it looks great now. Now I'm happy with the contrast. But yeah, it was a lot of work again for all the cast to kind of do. And then like even Ron is the most he's the most I would say he's the most experienced out of the three guys in terms of screen fighting and stuff
Hmm.
like that. You've probably seen his face all around. He's a very well known character actor, but um, you know even that, but him gaining weight about a good a significant amount of weight, you move your body a little bit differently than what you're used
Hmm.
to. And so he was even feeling that challenges, and you can kind of see that in the way he kind of like throws the kicks, and you can see the actors kind of making those adjustments real time into seeing how their body is kind of do this choreography and stuff like that.
Right.
So yeah, it's like it's that's what I really what we really kind of wanted to go for and appreciate was like how real that type of these guys actually trying to move is, and what that actually means, and the whole ramifications of that.
Right. I did appreciate the authenticity of the fight scenes themselves. So it wasn't, and I think I read somewhere that you had to do that because you didn't have a big budget for like wire acts and stuff like that. But I think it led perfectly to the movie itself. I mean, it was authentic kung fu. It was something that a lot of people can relate to, and it's the ground game there and whatnot. And so I think you captured that perfectly. So.
Yeah, they did all their own stunts because we couldn't afford stunt doubles. Number one. Number two, they really wanted to, and so that's kind of like what we want to go. And this kind of speaks to the indie film. Like, we already knew it was going to be a big budgeted film, so you kind of want to come up with a story that kind of makes sense, and stuff that you
Mhm.
could pull off in this world. And so it all kind of worked together in that sense. And yeah, like you say, wires first of all would have been out of the question for budget, but number two, it's just not the world that we have, and it's not that. And I love and appreciate, like I said, just all that the incredible history of wire work action. But
Mhm.
it's just this is kind of a different flavor, though, different dish. They were just cooking up this type of dish, and it just had its own particular needs and specifics and whatnot. And also like um, the type of action was meant to be a little bit sloppier, and these guys are not quite up to snuff in the
Mhm.
film. And so how do we kind of like find those textures and elements? So in the same sense, we had to kind of like train ourselves when we were editing, is to like look for the other takes that may not look great but would be right for the film.
Mm.
So there's a couple takes where we would use where it's like the second best take or the third best take,
That's
in
cool.
terms of like technical, in terms of like
Hmm.
looking and everything being crisp and clean, because we wanted that roughness and that texture.
That's really cool. I didn't even think about that. That is really cool. It's a little tidbit you learned here on Pop Cult X.
Right here, only here.
Well, thank you very much, Val, for spending some time with us today. We really, really appreciate it. We're huge fans of your work, huge fans of Paper Tigers. I look forward to espousing it to everyone. I told my dad, who's been in Taekwondo for many more years than I
Oh
stayed with
yeah.
it. He loved the movie. So it is a generational, like you said, it goes beyond just one generational. It crosses all boundaries. So thank you again so very much for taking some time to talk with us today. We really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, it was great chatting with you guys. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
So for that, we will be signing off, and thank you again, everyone, for watching Little Talks with Pop Cult X.